Joins us. Hey, Dan.
How's it going?
We're doing good, Dan, and this is the week when you start to earn your money as a fantasy racing expert. And Dan is the fantasy racing expert online. You can follow him on Twitter at Fantasy Race and read all his stuff at yahoosports.com. And then, of course, he's the director of fantasy racing for Nascar.com. Dan, we're going to the first mile-and-a-half track of the year. We had, maybe 23 races on similar tracks. I know they're not the same, but similar. Vegas is a fast one. First time for this new car. How the hell are you going to make your picks for this one?
Well, last year, there were 13 drivers that earned top tens in at least half of the cookie-cutter starts. Vegas, Texas, Kansas, Charlotte, Kentucky, Atlanta, Chicago. They're all different, obviously, but they have enough similar characteristics that they can be lumped together, and looking at them as a whole gives you a good sense of who's going to be strong. They require a lot of the same stuff. You have to have horsepower and handling, and to get that, you've got to spend a lot of money to get those things perfect. So the drivers that are going to be dominating the top 10 are going to be the Hendrick Motorsports drivers, the Richard Childress drivers, Roush Fenway, maybe Joe Gibbs. So there aren't going to be a whole lot of surprises at the front of the pack.
It's I agree with you. Of course I do, and that's the only way you can really pick about 60% of the NASCAR races. You have to go with with what's happened in the past. But is there anything about Vegas particularly? I know it's one of the faster mile-and-a-half tracks. Is there anything about Vegas particularly that you'll look at? I know we just had Dustin Long on the show, and he mentioned Tony Stewart's dominance at the racetrack the last couple of years. I know Stewart's been good there, but we're not the same car. What are you gonna do? I mean, who's your team stacking up for you, Yahoo, this week? Maybe we start there.
Well, and I actually don't believe that Tony Stewart is going to be a favorite this week for a couple of reasons. Yes, he won last year. He finished second the year before that. Since the track was reconfigured and repaved and they added the progressive banking, though, he's been a little more missed than hit up until these last two seasons. In 2006, he finished 21st. He finished 43rd in 2008, 26th in 2009. And his other finishes are in the top 10, but not in the top 5. He also hasn't had a back-to-back top 10 since the first couple of chase races last year. The progressive banking, I think, throws a bit of a monkey wrench into the driver's plans. It makes this track behave differently than most of the other particular courses. So that's why when I retreat and start looking at all of the mile-and-a-half tracks in toto, because there aren't a lot of streaks currently. There are 4 drivers that have back-to-back top 10s, but that's not as much as you see on some of the other courses. So where Yahoo is concerned, I think this is a good week to play a straight Hendrick ticket. All 4 of their drivers last year had top 10s in at least 50% of the cookie-cutter races. Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr. were both nearly perfect. Johnson had 8 top 10s in 10 races, 6 of which were top 5s. He finished well in Vegas. He won one of the Texas races. He's got to be right there at the top of the charts. So he's who I would take in Group A. In Group B, you got to go with Junior. No one swept the top 10 last year on this course type, but he was the closest. And he finished in the top 10 in 8 races and might have swept the top 10 if he hadn't missed the fall Kansas and Charlotte races because of concussion. So I think he's definitely poised to pick back up to where he left off last year, especially after a relatively strong run there at Phoenix and Daytona.
Yeah, I've been impressed with Junior so far this year. Obviously, you have to be impressed with Jimmy Johnson with the first and a second, but Junior's been a stalwart so far. I like what I see there. Any surprise at Casey Kane's continued bad luck at the start of a season?
Vegas was a particularly bitter pill for him to swallow last year at the beginning of the season because he was battling for a top 5 on that final restart when everybody got stacked up in front of him and he slapped the wall to avoid it. I think he would have had a top 10 then, and he would have been just as strong as the other guys. He rebounded and finished well in the rest of the cookie cutter races, won the Coke 600, and I think he's just as good a pick in Group A as Johnson is. So those would be my two guys, and I'd probably make it a race time decision.
Steve,
it's early season now. It's Daytona and Phoenix are two totally different, dissimilar tracks. I think he's shown that he can rebound, that he can get his head back in the game. So I'm not concerned about him just yet.
Steve had a comment earlier in the show that he thinks Carl Edwards has shot his career wad, that he's basically on the downslope of his career, which I think is maybe one of the dumbest things he's ever said. But I digress.
I don't think it is nearly the dumbest thing I've ever said. I know.
I want to ask Dan his opinion. Do you think was Carl's win at Phoenix a fluke? Is he going to be a one-off winner every year, or is he a real contender for the championship this year? And can he win at Vegas?
Can he win at Vegas? Sure. Roush Fenway's got some solid equipment, and they're good on cookie-cutter courses. Right. So if he's going to run strong in the unrestricted intermediate speedways. He surprised me at Charlotte or at Phoenix because that organization is not good across the board on short, flat tracks. Does he have more wins than him? Yeah, he's got more wins than him. Is he going to string together long streaks of top tens? Probably not. But getting that monkey off of his back has liberated the team to the point that they could have sporadic runs of top tens. I wouldn't be surprised to see him finish in the top 10 this week. I wouldn't be surprised to see them put together 2 or 3 or 4 top tens at a time, then struggle, and then put together another 3 or 4 or 5 top tens and struggle. And I think that's going to be the pattern of the season.
Man, I am
He'll make the chase, but just barely.
I'm just stunned that you guys feel this way about Carl Edwards. I guess that makes me the dummy in the room. But okay, we've got about a minute. Dan, real quick, who are you looking at in your C drivers for Yahoo this week, and then give us an overall pick to win at Las Vegas.
David Reagan was good on cookie-cutter courses in his last 2 seasons with Roush Fenway Racing. For that reason, I think you've got to look at Ricky Stenhouse in that final Roush Fenway ride. In addition to him, you've got Trevor Bayne, who was somewhat uneven on this course type, but he did do well at, I think one of his best runs came here at Vegas at the beginning of the year. So those are my 2 Group C drivers. I'd probably lean towards Bayne because he won't be there for all the races, and it's an allocation management, a way to manage your allocations.
Yeah, okay. I got it. Okay, who's your pick? Who's going to win it?
Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson.
Runaway winner.
Yeah, I think you might be right. He's Dan Beaver. You can follow him on Twitter at Fantasy Race. Read his fantasy racing advice at NASCAR.com and YahooSports.com. Dan, thanks again for your time this week. Enjoy the weather out in Phoenix, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Dan Beaver.